Welcome to our Teradata AppCenter overview today. Today we're going to be touching base on the functionality and the users of the Teradata AppCenter solution set. So within the Teradata Unified Data Architecture, the Teradata AppCenter acts as an app framework. And what specifically is an app framework? An app framework is really this self-service platform that enables users and IT to build, deploy, and manage and run specific data-centric apps for the enterprise, and these applications are at scale across multiple platforms within the unified data architecture. So there are multiple app types that can be built and leveraged within Teradata AppCenter. Your traditional analytical apps, ones that query specific data and measure and visualize KPIs, and they're built to really query data within any of the platforms that exist within the UDA. Then you have specific business process apps. Those manage business processes and workflows within the infrastructure as well. Of course, you have data services apps. They provide access data, manipulation of data that exists within the unified data architecture, and then data engines. And those specifically move data throughout levels and layer data within the architecture within the UDA as well. So what specifically is an app within the Teradata AppCenter app framework? Well, it's mainly two things. It's a self-contained process with a set of well-defined inputs and outputs. And these processes specifically within these apps themselves that exist within AppCenter can be used and executed against one or more of the platforms that exist within the unified data architecture. And I'll get later into this presentation specifically highlight what specific platforms these applications can execute against. That can query data, can manipulate data, can execute specific workflows, etc. within the architecture. So let's look at the anatomy of an app and what an app would specifically do within the Teradata AppCenter infrastructure. An app is specifically has a process that would query data. It has the ability to return those results, and then you have the optional choice of visualizing those results within AppCenter and save those results for viewing and making those results available for different people within the company to actually access and share. So that's one anatomy of an app where you can query the data, get the results, visualize it, and then share. A whole component of this is all a self-service architecture where multiple users from the business side as well as the IT side can leverage the infrastructure. So there are multiple deployment options that are available for the Teradata AppCenter. One is in the Teradata Managed Cloud itself. That would enable customers who have infrastructure that exists within the Teradata Managed Cloud to create applications and then leverage those applications against the platforms within the UDA that exist within that managed cloud environment, as well as the Amazon Web Services and the Amazon Cloud. And then, of course, on-premise as well, where a customer can create an AppCenter environment and leverage that AppCenter environment against existing or new data platforms that exist within that UDA infrastructure, such as the Teradata database or Presto and other platforms that exist as well. So what data sources are actually supported within this infrastructure? So when you have an application, it can actually, as I explained earlier, can go through that process of querying data and creating results. And what actual platforms can it actually query? Well, today, the Teradata AppCenter applications can query data that exists within the Teradata database, the Teradata Aster platform as well, and also Presto. And then by leveraging Presto, that enables the application to query Presto, and then Presto can query any of the platforms that Presto can access, such as data that exists within the Hadoop environment, data that exists within Cassandra, or MySQL, or PostgreSQL, any of the platforms that actually within the UDA that Presto can execute against. And we're planning on many other data sources coming in the near future, that the apps can actually directly access and query and execute against. So applications are basically able to be written in multiple languages, then uploaded and encapsulated within App Center and then executed against those platforms I mentioned earlier. So any standard development tools can be used to write apps in the languages that are supported. So for example, if you're utilizing SQL as the language that you're going to execute or write an application in and execute that query against any of those platforms I mentioned earlier, that can be written in any SQL tool, such as Teradata Studio, Eclipse, SQL Assistant, Scratchpad, etc. And then that specific code is uploaded into App Center, encapsulated, and then used as an application that can be leveraged by multiple people and those results shared, as I mentioned earlier. Apps today can be written in three main languages: SQL, Java, and the Teradata BTIG script. We're planning on multiple new languages in the future, such as Python and R, to be supported as well. So there's numerous languages that applications, the actual business logic can be written in and then uploaded and encapsulated within App Center and then shared and leveraged across the enterprise. So it's the process of creating an app in App Center is fairly easy. As I mentioned earlier, the app code is written in the supported language in a standard development tool, and the code is simply uploaded to App Center using a web-based upload tool. It's not horribly difficult. You basically point to the file, what file with the code, upload, and then it's encapsulated as an app in App Center, and then you can set up permissions of who can leverage the application, what platforms it's going to execute against, if there's going to be specific result sets, if it's going to create graphic images, and those specific graphs are shared, and the permissions to actually access and share those graphs as well. So it's set up as a very easy to use self-service environment where people with specific skills, such as just knowing how to write some SQL, can leverage can create applications and leverage them within the infrastructure, or a person who is just a business user can actually go in and execute applications and not even have to understand the underlying code, just what they're actually executing. So there's a repository and library of applications, and it allows these apps to be shared and leveraged across the enterprise. So you can have multiple different personas of users, from the technical user who can write Java code and encapsulate that application for business users, and the business users who can just come in and have permissions to actually execute an application and get those result sets back. These apps are actually represented as icons in the repository, and then the repository itself supports things such as security and authentication, etc. And the great thing about it is this infrastructure enables people to easily share these applications throughout the company and enables data reuse, code reuse, and really collaboration when it comes to analyzing data within the infrastructure. Also, the apps can be parameterized. So a user can create an application and then every time going in, choose specific parameters within that application to execute against, such as what specific table to look at, or parameters with greater than ages greater than 30, ages greater than 40, etc. Any kind of parameter that you could specifically think of when executing a query. So when you actually need to run an application in Teradata AppCenter, it becomes a very simple process. The user chooses the system to query, specifically enters the login information, and then enters the app parameters, runs the apps, and gets results back. You can actually set up scheduling as well within the application, and that allows for apps to be run automatically, and users can just go in and see the specific result sets. So one thing that's great about these apps, it's not only querying data, but you can actually do anything data manipulation. So you could actually have an application that could go in and do data manipulation, data processing, and then another app that could be in that same App Center environment that could then query that data that you just manipulated and prepared as well. So it's not just a query engine, and a query execution application, but it also has anything that you could think of that you could write within those coded languages that can execute against those platforms. So a very powerful engine that can be, in a self-service environment, can be shared across the enterprise. Well, thank you for attending our brief overview of the Teradata AppCenter solution set. And if you need more information, visit us at teradata.com.